Welcome, everybody. So that was an excellent session today by Mehul on VMDR. I learned a lot. I hope you guys did too. And we have fantastic sessions coming up for the breakout where he's actually going to go into the details of different aspects of VMDR. And we have a very focused session on patch management and remediation. So please do sign up for those. We'll be starting in a couple of hours. But for now, I'm very excited to go into a Q&A. So please use the browser session that you have to be able to send in questions. Our team will monitor that and pass those on to me. So we can get those answered. And to answer a bunch of your questions, in addition to Mehul, I also have Chris and Matthew who are joining me as well. They're both customers of Qualys, and they have a bunch of good things, mostly, to say, I hope. So I'm going to let Chris and Matthew introduce themselves, maybe talk about your role, the organization, and then we can get into the Q&A. So Chris?
Good. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for all those attending. My name is Chris Song, manager of the Information Security Solution Engineering Department at Jabil. And I've been with Jabil for 5 years, and we keep the lights on. My department is responsible for the break fix of day-to-day operations and security responsibilities at Jabil. Keeps the days and evenings very interesting, and we have teams in the US as well as Penang, Malaysia, that keep the lights on. So happy to be with everybody today.
Thank you. And then Matthew.
Hi, my name is Matthew Rogers. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at Syntax. We're a leading ERP hosting platform, JD Edwards, SAP, Oracle E-Business Suite. I am in charge of the security of our numerous data centers around the world and over the delivery of security operations for all of our customers. We have over 700 large-scale customers, ranging from hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue to billions of dollars of revenue. Such customers are electric companies and auto manufacturers, airlines, and a lot of your major retailers. So we're a large hosting platform with a large footprint in security. We utilize numerous tools and services that come through my group, and ultimately I run the products and responsible for the security in all these environments.
Awesome, thank you and welcome. I think both of your organizations are in different stages of leveraging VMDR and Qualys agents. So we'd love to hear from you about your experiences, where it's helping, what we can do better. But first question, I want to go to Mehul. I think one of the things that struck to me in your presentation was the attack surface options, which I thought was kind of interesting because there's a lot of talk I see about the prioritization based on CVSS, parameters and things like that. But the attack surface kind of seems to go a level beyond. So can you maybe tell me a little bit more in depth on how that's different, being able to leverage that attack surface option relative to just basically an RTI?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I mean, the attack surface allows us to narrow down the prioritization to the things that matter the most, right? And in my presentation, I talked about an Apache vulnerability that might, you might have Apache installed on a system that is not running, and you could have an asset which has Apache installed and vulnerable and running. So if you have to compare between these two same vulnerabilities on two different assets, the one that has Apache vulnerability and running is more important, right? So in terms of attack surface options, one of the things we focus on is this running? Is this service running? So if that is the case, you can use that attack surface options to prioritize your remediation. Similar aspect on the asset context itself. Where is this asset in your organization? Is this part of internal asset, completely locked down, firewalled off, completely taken away from the internet, or is this something actually exposed to the internet? I talked about an RDP example in my presentation where if, with all the, even the IT management is happening over RDP, right? If those assets are exposed to the internet, then you need to patch RDP vulnerabilities quicker on those assets compared to others. So we spend a lot of time refining our attack surface options. We're actually, with the COVID, we're also investing a lot of time into detecting vulnerabilities that are part of ransomware. So that is an RTI in addition to the attack surface that you can use to prioritize your vulnerabilities, not just the vulnerabilities, but the asset they impact on.
Yeah, so instead of having this huge pile of severity 5 or CVSS 7 and above, kind of helping put things in different buckets, and then customer can choose the prioritization of what needs to be fixed first, I guess. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, that's how we want to move away from the attribute level prioritization, but more context-based prioritization. Where is this? Who's exploiting this vulnerability? What part of the threat vector is this vulnerability, and so on? I think that gives more richness to the prioritization algorithm rather than a numeric score, which may or may not mean a lot of them.
Okay, there's another question coming in from a user that's sort of related to the prioritization. Is that do I need to have an agent to run the VMDR reporter? And I guess the other question related to that is, what kind of value do I get when I'm pushing non-agent data through that VMDR reporting?
That's a great question as well. Agent is not required. Like I said in my presentation, we have a variety of comprehensive sensors to get the vulnerability data. You can use our appliance, you can use our internet scanners, you can use our out-of-band sensors. Agent, in our opinion, is the most real-time information that you can get. So, one of the challenges with legacy VM is this point-in-time snapshot of your vulnerability information. Agent gives you real-time information. As soon as the vulnerability is discovered, you get notified. So that is something that is uniquely of value that comes out of an agent-based deployment. And our agent is very lightweight, so it is not going to consume a lot of resources on your infrastructure. So it gives you real-time information about the vulnerabilities. You can then also use the same agent to patch vulnerabilities with our patch management add-on, as I talked about in my presentation as well. So the agent has the uniqueness of where uniquely it gives you real-time information about the vulnerabilities. And once you determine these are the vulnerabilities I want to patch, you can also go ahead and deploy the patches for these vulnerabilities.
All right, and the third question here, and Chris and Matthew might relate to that, is my network admins are always mad at me when I ask them to scan or try to get an agent on some of these devices, which is not possible. How can I do vulnerability assessment on these kind of devices?
I mean, there are many ways to do this. I mean, one of the things we also do, we have tried to do in the recent years is out-of-band sensors. So if you have vulnerability data about, we acknowledge there are some systems that cannot be scanned, so you can give us the data about these systems and we will analyze the data for you and do an analysis of the vulnerabilities that we found on those systems. If you want, you can also always use the authenticated scans or unauthenticated scans to get information, but there are multiple ways to find and report and patch vulnerabilities with the Qualys Cloud platform. So
on the out-of-band, if I want to give the data, what does that entail? Is that like an API, or is it something that I do through the UI? And is there some guidance around it to say what kind of data is required from a system?
Yeah, we have extensive documentation around how to get the data into the platform, and you can use that information to directly bring that data into the platform.
Another question here is that we have not really covered our laptop estate for vulnerability assessment. We've always focused on the servers till now, and COVID has changed that. Is there value in putting the agent on the laptops as well for vulnerability assessment? Mehul, what do you have to say to that?
No, I mean, like I said, the agents are super lightweight. We are seeing an uptick in our deployments with agents because of COVID, because this not only allows them to scan for vulnerabilities, but you can now also patch systems using the same agent. You don't have these agents directly go to the vendors and download the patches, so you're not restricted to the VPN, or you're not blowing up your VPNs to deploy the patches. So we would definitely recommend installing the agents on the laptop so that you can deploy these patches quickly. For example, one of the things that we are seeing a lot is the uptick in ransomware, and the ransomware primarily target browsers, right? So if you want to reduce the exposure from some of these things, you can quickly deploy patches for Google, Chrome, and Safari using our agent and reduce the exposure or the potential of ransomware exploiting some of their assets which have now gone remote and working from home.
All right, so let's see if your Matthew's thoughts mirror yours. But I think Matthew, with COVID coming on, I think that what kind of change in direction of challenges did you have to go through with security, given that all the users were now going remote, etc.?
So a big trend, right, is remote work. And it was, with some companies, it's been a trend, with some it has not, right? And with the impact of COVID, now it's the trend, right? So it's an exciting time for remote workers or people that dreamed of being remote workers, because now the opportunity is here, right? A lot of companies, they have that legacy mindset of the machine will be patched when it's back in the office, right? It'll get its virus definition updates when it's back in the office. They can bring it home, but they can't really use it until it's back in the office, right? So, a lot of businesses have embraced the cloud and this mobility. A lot of them have not, right? So with our 700 plus customers, we got a mix of it all. And I can tell you that COVID has been a motivator for mass embracement of cloud services, like the Qualys' original cloud security service, right, for vulnerability management. You guys were doing it before it was cool. So from that perspective, I see deployment for us, increased VMDR deployment for agents, right, for all the individual contributors so their machines can be managed. Risk profiles with our customers, we see massive change in workflows for large companies. We're talking 10,000, 20,000 employees. They're revitalizing, they're retooling, they're adding EDR technologies, they're adding vulnerability management, they're evaluating their strategy. You can't do a sensor-based scan on devices that don't come to the office anymore, right? And at the end of this, things will shift. We'll go back to the office to a certain extent, but no one's going to be in the office 100% full time, I think, in any business going forward. That's going to be a fundamental culture shift, and IT has to embrace that at every company. And that's what's happening, right? People are adjusting strategy, they're adapting, they're figuring out what does and doesn't work. Printers don't work, this doesn't work, patching doesn't work, right, for some folks, and then they adjust. So I think that patching agent, right, there's also SCCM strategies and other things that are being completely reevaluated. So it's a definite shift in strategy and risk and compliance concerns.
Yeah, I think you as you mentioned, I think this whole thing, like, okay, this is temporary and everything will just go back to how it was in a couple of months. I think we're past that now, right? So I think things may go back to a certain extent, but it's of no use, because if you have even 25% of your workforce is now essentially permanently remote, securing that workforce has to be part of your overall strategy, obviously there. So. I might be shooting myself in the foot here by asking you this question, but how has Qualys helped you in that journey with VMDR and with the agents? Where has it been beneficial?
So VMDR has been super helpful from a management of risk and the ability to respond to the board, right? Because with our customers right now, escalations come from the board, okay, which asks the CEO, which then asks the CIO, which then asks the manager of the ERP or the IT group to find out what the answer is, right? So the last one, right, we had this net logon vulnerability, and then there was another one, which was the IPv6 vulnerability. What was that?
Bad neighbor.
Bad neighbor, okay, right? So how does this impact us, and what's the answer, right? So with the VMDR and Qualys in general, you've got the built-out definitions for that, right? We can scan for it, we can identify in real time, and we can answer quickly due to the responsiveness of Qualys to that manager who reports to the CIO, who reports to the CEO, who reports to the board, right? And these are big wins for the security organizations, because from a security perspective, you may get 5 interactions a year, right? And every one of them has to be positive, especially at the board level, right? And Qualys has helped us deliver successful responses to these for our customers, for their boards, for our own board, and manage that risk in an effective way and get a real inventory. VMDR is a responsive thing. One of my head analysts, he says that the VMDR turns us into an active vulnerability management versus a passive-based technology, right? So that's where we're seeing value.
Yeah, and that was one of the things we really focused on, is to make sure that asset inventory is a big component of VMDR, because if you don't see it, you cannot really secure it. And I think we're glad to see that starts to really show. And as we were running the numbers on the platform recently, there's a large number of agents that are being deployed also right now, where these are inventory only agents. So as the customers might know, we have the concept of having an inventory only agent, which is no charge, right? And the idea there is just to first begin with visibility. And I think the visibility is a core component, and then comes, of course, vulnerability management. So a question for Chris is, and this is something probably I get in every Q&A, is how do you measure the effectiveness of your vulnerability management program? Is it, definitely not anymore, your total severity counts, I guess. So in today's world, where there's all these RTIs and different predictions and all of that, how do you guys look at to say, yeah, I think we're doing good?
I think Matthew hit it on best is the metrics of the board. You can have vulnerability management software, you can have all these processes in place, but at the end of the day, the metrics tell the true tale. So with Jabil being a very large global manufacturing company, we have subnets with a multitude of different type of assets, devices, Raspberry Pi, you name it. So if you have your processes and your cadence where you're running your monthly scans or whatever the case may be, is you need to see, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, are my vulnerabilities going up or are the vulnerabilities going down? And there's usually two things that come out of that, either the right tool or the right processes. So we've had some success with VMDR, as well as it was touched on agent-based scanning, because we deployed 80,000 plus agents last year, and we really saw tremendous success switching from appliance-based to agent-based, because there's a lot of dynamics in vulnerability management that, unless you've worked in vulnerability management, people just think it's setting up a scanner and scan. And we all know that, who manages and who've been engineers in the product. That's not the case. You look at your numbers and you're like, I have 100 and something thousand assets, but yet only 50,000 were on the scanning cycles, and we're counting all the subnets. So what happened? So the big thing that our CISO, Jet Young, asked us was, hey, let's take a look at success by the trend. Is it going up or is it going down? And once we deployed the agent and been using it for about a year now, we really started seeing not only assets matching what we had in our CMDB, but vulnerabilities were going down because we got the right content to the right patching teams. And it's all about integrity with vulnerability scanning and reporting. So for us, there's CVE, there's CVSS, exploitability vectors. Those you all take into consideration, and you go, okay, well, what does success look like to us? Well, success looks like to Jabil, as it probably does for most companies in the vulnerability space. Are you trending downward? That way, as it was said, if you present your metrics to the board and they go, wow, that $500,000, $600,000, whatever you're spending, that's a good return on investment because your vulnerabilities are going down. So if you started tackling, say, 9.1, 9.2 CVSS scores, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, we have none in the environment. Okay, what's the next bar? 8.5. What's the next bar? 8. That is really showing progress, because you can go back to your board and say, our teams, our engineering, our security analysts, our leadership, we are making significant moves, and now we don't have any criticals in the environment. Again, you're going to get some because it's the part of the business. But that, to me and to Jabil, is a true measure of success, where you can go back in 6 months to a year and go, wow, not only are we trending down total and vulnerability count, but your criticals are out the door. That really means you have your ducks in a row and your processes are working properly.
Yeah, that's and to the point earlier that Matthew was making, the interactions of security team with the board have not always been pleasant. Right. Anytime the board wants to talk to the security guys, it's always a bad thing. So I think being able to show this trend is definitely a positive there.
Absolutely.
So,
yep.
You know, Matthew, I don't mean to talk about religion here, but you know, agent or agentless. What do you say to those people? Because you know, we having started from an agentless scanning capability in the early days to now providing agent as well, we see the entire spectrum in the people who are completely anti-agent to those who are only pro-agent. So you guys have done a bunch of work around this. So curious what your thoughts are.
So, you know, like every complicated question has a complicated answer, and it depends, right? And you know, the agent-based scanning is great, right? But you have to trust the vendor, right? And at the end of the day, you trust Qualys, right? They have access in your environment. You could trust the agent, and it depends on the approach. I've run into a lot of different individuals, deal a lot with Europe, deal a lot with China, deal a lot with India. In different places, they have different cultural concerns, right? Europe has GDPR concerns. They're worried about agents, they're worried about this. And at the end of it, you either trust your partner or you don't, right? And if you trust them, you have to trust the agent, right? And you put it in the environment. And if you're going to use the automated scanning appliances and you're doing authenticated scans, you're trusting that agent with credentials as well, right? So understanding your real risk, right? Who your partners are and how you do that, and then you tie it in and you get your result, right? At the end of it, you trust Qualys, you trust your other cloud providers, right? You have an implicit trust, and once you've established you have that trust, you then work within the framework of that, right? Agents are great.
Yeah, I think we also are getting to the point with the expansion of the coverage of vulnerability management where you may not even have an option in certain cases, right? When you really talk about ephemeral cloud instances and you talk about laptops that you really cannot scan, I think that's kind of where we see that there's some sort of a big uptake. I mean, in the agent usage for sure. So one other question again, going back to the talk about measurement, is how do you see? Do you drive this measurement of the downward trend with what, like SLAs, carrot, stake? Do you provide automation to provide these users the direct visibility? Because that's kind of been a bottleneck in the past where, everybody has to kind of ask for their PDF report and then, they don't have the visibility. They patch and then they come ask you in 5 minutes, well, I patch, how is the vulnerability not fixed yet? So I was curious about just an overall automation trend. What do you guys do there?
So you're asking me, right?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Chris as well the same thing. So.
Okay. So from that perspective, right, everything needs to be ticketed and be worked, right? And automation for generating the tickets and assessment and assignment to engineers. I mean, it's just like any other IT process, right? Some companies, they like to do it via spreadsheet. We like to do it by actual ticketing, right? And make sure they get worked. And this is never done, right? You're never done. I see Chris nodding. This is a program. Right? Vulnerability management's never done. Every month there's a new crisis. Sometimes twice a month there's a crisis, 3 or 4 times a month, right? Usually, it's once a month a crisis, right? Every now and again we get a couple extra ones. And it's constant, right? So this is a process like filling up the gas tank in the car or peeling the potatoes or whatever, right? Vulnerability management is a full-time job and it's never done. So ticket, track it, work it, close it, repeat.
Absolutely. Chris, you seem to echo.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I would add, one thing that we've been using Qualys for 6 years at Jabil. One of the best things I like about, the Qualys platform is you can take a hybrid approach. Jabil has been very successful the last year with our vulnerability management because we get the best of both worlds. We have appliances where they're best suited. We have agents where they're best suited. And we have major initiatives right now with ServiceNow, ticket integration, where, as everyone's going to the buzzword automation, love it. But it does take a while to get to a rinse and repeat automated cycle because you have to, lay out a good strategy and a good game plan. So for us, we say, use the best of both worlds with the hybrid system that we have, appliance and agent-based. And like Matthew said, you're never really done, because the bad guys and gals are always going to come out of the woodwork and come up with something new and creative. So that means the vendor has to come up with new schemes and new tactics, as well as the customer has to come up with new processes. And yeah, we want to make it from a security, because even though, you know, you can say we're one team, one company, you still have individual silos within an organization. We always treat our internal departments as customers. So if our infrastructure team comes to us and says, hey, we love getting these reports, is there a way that we can do something from a remediation side that's automated? We try to look for those areas. So integration with CMDB, integration with ServiceNow, tickets being generated that don't flood people but provide enough content. The fact that your tool provides solution, content, information that helps a person who patch. Hey, I don't have to go out on the internet and search, because with the integration technology, I'm able to see right here. It's a severity 9.2. I'm using Adobe Flash, a legacy version. I got to go ahead and do this, and this is why it's vulnerable. That has been a major home run for us. Got to use it. The Tampa Bay Rays in the World Series, so I got to throw a baseball example. But it's been a home run for us by using your product with this infiltration, because it just allows us to get things done quicker and allows everybody to be more successful. Because every year when you go up for product review, you go, hey, yeah, this worked great last year. Can we improve upon it? We know the bad folks are going to improve. So what can we do to play that mental chess battle back and forth, where we're always a couple steps ahead? And Jabil's approach has been really hybrid model, and it's been working for us last year. So yeah, we've been happy.
That's really good feedback, because you do have devices where you just can't have an agent, and they are sitting right next to that other device that has an agent. So I think that hybrid approach is very important.
Yeah.
And I see Mehul quite happy with all the good things that you're saying. So I have a difficult question for you, Mehul, which I'll come back to. But Chris, I had another question. You know, as you guys have a lot of OT devices, and you know, just kind of how we saw people initially focus on the data center, then they expanded into cloud, container, now they expand into laptops, etc. Do you see that trend continuing, where more attention, more focus is coming on to vulnerabilities and misconfigurations in OT environment as well? And how do you see that aspect?
I look at it from an optimistic standpoint. I look at it as opportunity. I know it's hard to imagine vulnerabilities as an opportunity, but with our environment, and we're looking to go in a couple of years, I think we've really hammered out some amazing processes. And if you can really nail down processes, I believe what's worked for Jabil is you can adapt to the struggles that come your way with OT, IoT, cloud, sensors, you know, and what we've done with the agent, and what we've done with your dashboards, what we've done with the fact that we've created a multitude of different dashboards that cater to our needs. I think it's visibility at the end of the day. I think it's visibility because, as it was said earlier in the meeting, you don't know what you don't see. And as long as I know about, and our team knows about what's out there, we will build processes to handle the new technologies, the containers, the cloud. So for our OT technology, we have a good beast of the team, which is our business information security officers that keep us abreast to new things that are happening in the environment. And what we do is we have meetings with them. They provide us, hey, here's what's coming down the pipe. And I get with my team, and the team puts their heads together, and just really, we strategize about what's next in line for us, and we hammer out the processes. And the processes for us really prepare us for the OT, the IoT, and anything else down the pipe. And that's where really we rely on Qualys, VMDR, because we want to have a partner and a product that says, hey, these new threats that are coming down the road, we got you covered. And here's the technology that we're developing, and this will help you, because with financial, with manufacturing, with Department of Defense. You have all these different fields, and certain vulnerabilities are a priority to others. If you're in finance, you're not really going to be too much concerned about a DDoS attack that affects, SCADA or industrial control systems. We would be. So that's why we really rely on your knowledge base, your data, your engineering to say, hey, here are the threats, here's what we see, and we build processes around those, and that helps us with success.
That's awesome. So Mehul, we were running out of time here, so I'm going to ask you the last question. As I saw the VMDR demo, and I love that end-to-end automation, getting to the ability to respond to these vulnerabilities quickly in a single workflow. But the question I have is, fixing things goes beyond patch management. So I love the patch management integration, but fixing things goes beyond patch management sometimes. So what do you see as the next things that your team is going to focus on when it comes to a bigger remediation picture rather than just patching, which of course is important?
No, I think that's a good question. So I mean, that I mentioned this in my presentation as well. Patching, when organizations look at remediation, they think about it as patching, but that is not good enough. Sometimes you have to look into mitigation or compensating controls, and those compensating controls could be changes in your registry keys. Those compensating controls could be on the network level, where you can just apply a network level fix and prevent the exploitation of the vulnerability itself. So one of the things we are looking into is how do we now take this to the level where when you look at a vulnerability, we also provide insight into, by the way, if you cannot patch it for a certain reason, maybe because of business reason, maybe you can apply a configuration fix which will temporarily reduce the risk of the vulnerability until you get to the point where you can get to your patching cycle, and then you can deploy the patches. You can also, so that's something we're looking into, something called as remediation console, where you'll have a variety of options to remediate the vulnerability. So not patch, but just remediate. So remediate the risk, the threat from that vulnerability.
Is Aaron going to cover that in a session later today?
Yes, later today we'll have a session from Iran, and he'll be doing a deep dive into the remediation console.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys. We're a little bit over our time. These conversations can go on forever. But I do appreciate Matthew and Chris for coming on and giving your thoughts on overall the industry, and then of course more specific to Qualys. So more importantly, I do appreciate the partnership, the design partnership. You guys have been giving us great feedback, which we have taken into account as we develop our solutions, and we really thrive on that as we are expanding the platform into multiple areas. So please do keep that feedback coming. So thank you, Mehul and Matthew and Chris for coming on.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Appreciate it.